We're gonna do a little bit of a programming video today. I think one of the things that I am good at as a coach is teaching practical application or teaching things in a way that's easy to understand and easy to apply to real life situations. Um, I do have a lot of athletes that have started coaching themselves, um, or just started taking people under the wing, guiding their friends, whatever it may be, and I feel like I've done a really good job at explaining the complexities of powerlifting training in a way that's easy to digest and easy to learn and then easy to apply. And so I figured I'd kind of start a little series on that and start with just basic periodization. Like, what is periodization? What's the whole point of it? What does it actually mean? And then give some practical examples of different styles of periodization, when they might be used, and how to use them. So the first one here is going to be linear periodization. Linear is pretty much like the almost the building block of most other periodizations. But first, like, what is it? Generally speaking, periodization is just organizing training. So you're not going into the gym every day, just making it up. It's just having a plan for um, the week, having a plan to progress. And that's kind of what periodization is specifically. It doesn't really deal with your training split very often. It deals more so with progression over time. And there are different styles that progress differently over time. And they all have their merits, they all have their ups and downs, their strengths and their downfalls, but they all can be useful in different scenarios. And it's important to know what the difference is and when you might want to use different types of periodization or different types of progression. So, what is linear periodization? Linear, just as the name suggests, is the weight goes up in a fixed fashion over time. Um, that can mean that volume progresses. So a lot oftentimes it starts off with a really high volume, and as volume goes down, weight goes up. But it could also mean that the volume is static and it stays in one place, and then and then the intensity just goes up. So kind of have two different cases of that was written out here. You can see, again, we start week 1 with 4 sets of 12. We finish week 10 with 3 sets of 1, and the weight just goes up every week from 60% all the way up to potentially past 100%. And this is really simple and really easy to apply for the reason that you kind of don't need to worry about deloads. You don't need to worry about so many other things. You kind of just have like a fixed rate of progression and you just keep going. And as even though intensity goes up, and so fatigue might build as intensity goes up, the volume also drops, and so fatigue might drop as um, the volume goes down. So the workload and the tonnage decreases over time, and the weight you lift increases over time. This can be good for a couple things because one, it is going to get you very ready to lift heavy weights. Um, when you spend 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks like below 5 reps, you're gonna get really good at handling these heavy weights, and it's just gonna set you up to do really well with that. The downfall here is that your work capacity can fall off really fast, and so depending on what type of lifter you are, be it male or female, or how big you are, um, smaller males and smaller women tend to do good with much higher work capacities, much higher workloads in training. And so if that workload falls off, oftentimes their performance falls off as well. But that's not always the case, and linear progression like this does tend to work fairly well for a lot of bigger guys. Um, the other case here is that volume stays the same. So you can see here, I kind of split it up into like full 3 4 week training blocks in a sense, where you just have 3 sets of 5, and then 4 sets of 4, and then 3 sets of 3. But the same thing, the weight just goes up. And you could even indefinitely use 3 sets of 5 or 5 sets of 5, right? We see that in programs like starting strength. Starting strength is the same training session repeated every other day, and you just add weight until you can't anymore. And that's pretty much like the quintessential textbook of example of linear periodization. Um, just write that out real quick what that looks like. This is pretty much what starting strength looks like. And they do this 3 days a week, then that's that whole program. You do squat, bench, deadlift. I think it's technically set out as Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and maybe on Wednesday you do overhead press instead of bench press. But you're essentially taking this exact same workout and repeating it Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you just add 5 pounds every single training session. So every workout you do is the exact same, and the volume is the exact same. Nothing changes. You just add weight. That is the quintessential textbook simplistic example of linear periodization. And who is that good for? Newbies. Linear periodization is really, really good for new lifters. And starting strength is marketed as a new lifter program. And there are tons. There's not just starting strength. There's tons of 5x5 type programs, for some reason, all revolving around 5. That do just basic. You repeat essentially the same workout either multiple days a week, or you repeat the same week again and again and again, just adding weight until you can't anymore. And then from there, you can explore different types of progression. You could reset your progression, etc. But yeah, linear periodization is really, really good for beginners, and it's also really good for people who are coming back after a long time off. So if you spent months away from the gym, maybe a year, maybe you've been inconsistent, when you're trying to rebuild back, that linear, just kind of setting a fixed volume, a certain workload, and just adding load until you get back up to your normal numbers is a really good way to do it. So how can we apply linear periodization to more advanced lifters? Right, because it's not always just about people rebuilding or beginners, but is there an application here for more intermediate, more advanced lifters? And there still is. So this is kind of a whole different subject here, but like the way most modern powerlifting programming is done is within a training block. A training block that has no specific set length. It differs from athlete to athlete, from coach to coach. But what's most common right now is that you have some sort of linear progression within a training block. And so even though you're not doing the exact same training session every day, you are doing usually the same training week, and you repeat that same training week again and again and again while adding load. And so here's here's an example week. Don't look into this too hard. I just wrote this down real quick, and the exact sets and reps themselves don't really matter a whole lot, but this could be an example of one training week that a lifter might do, and they would repeat the same training week for anywhere from usually 3 to 7 weeks straight, without any changes in variations, without any changes in volume, but with just an increase in load every week. And whether that load is set by percentages or by RP or whatever it may be, it's essentially progressing in a linear fashion within the confines of this type of programming. And so even though it might not be classic linear periodization over a long period of time, it still can be useful using linear progression within the confines of whatever your program might be. And that is still how most programs will work and most progressions will work. There are a lot of other ways to do that, but now you kind of get into different styles of periodization, more like DUP, daily undulating periodization, that affect your training split more and your progression a little bit less. But even when you look at block periodization and other things like that, they still tend to progress in a linear fashion within the confines of their own little setups. And so linear periodization really is the backbone of a lot of other progression styles and a lot of other programming styles, because everything else still progresses in a linear fashion in some way or another, even if they're not using the traditional like high volume to low volume or static volume setup. Even if volume increases over time, as it does with some sessions, even as if volume doesn't do anything here, maybe it goes up and down over time, the one thing that's fairly constant in most types of programming is that weight does increase over time. So yeah, that's just a quick overview of linear periodization and exactly what it is and how it can be applied in an easy way. The point of this is not to get too complex or too in-depth yet. We're just going to just get like basic overviews and a basic understanding and a basic knowledge point so we can get further into the details much later on. So if there's anything I missed, if you had any more complex questions, leave a comment. And if there's any specific thing you'd like me to cover, leave a comment. I'm definitely going to go through block periodization and DUP next, and then we'll see from there.